Welcome back to Time Drift. Tonight, we allow our minds to float softly through the mists of history and the golden haze of legend. We are traveling back to the realm of King Arthur, venturing deep into the twilight that exists between recorded fact and ancient myth. Together, we shall gently open the faded pages of old manuscripts, tracing the ink of monks who wrote by candlelight, searching for the quiet truth behind the once and future king. We will wander through the echo of Camelot, remembering the names of forgotten knights and contemplating the true, hidden meaning of the Holy Grail. There is no rush here, only the slow, rhythmic turning of the wheel of time. So, settle in, take a deep breath, and let the fog of Avalon roll in. It is here, at the very beginning, that we find the deepest shadows. For when we look for the man known as Arthur, we are not looking for a king in a shining castle, but rather a figure standing in the twilight of the Roman Empire. Historians have long pondered whether Arthur was a man at all, or perhaps a title passed down through the ages. Some scholars believe the name itself, Arthur, may derive from the Roman clan name Artorius, suggesting that the roots of this legend lie not in medieval magic, but in the rigid discipline of Rome. Curiously, the earliest accounts do not call him a king. In the dusty chronicles that survived the Dark Ages, he is referred to as Dux Bellorum, the leader of battles. This paints a picture, not of a monarch on a throne, but of a gritty military commander, fighting to hold back the encroaching night, after the Roman legions had departed Britain's shores. There is a compelling theory, whispered among researchers, that the figure we know as Arthur might have been a man named Rhyothemus, a historical figure from the 5th century, described as the king of the Britons. He crossed the sea to fight in Gaul, and then, like Arthur, vanished into history, retreating, it is said, to a town called Avalon. The echoes of his life resonate strangely with the legends that would follow centuries later. Let us turn the page to the 9th century, to a text known as the Historia Brittonum, or the History of the Britons, attributed to a monk named Nennius. Here, for the first time, we see a list of 12 great battles fought by Arthur. The final battle, at Mount Badon, is said to have been a great victory, stopping the Saxon advance for a generation. It is a moment frozen in time, where history and myth begin to blur. It is fascinating to note that in these early rugged tales, there is no mention of a round table, and certainly no mention of a golden city called Camelot. In the earliest Welsh poetry, Arthur is a wilder figure, a hunter of magical boars, and a defender against supernatural threats. He roamed a landscape of mist and mountains, not the manicured courts of later romance. Speaking of early mentions, within the ancient Welsh poem, the Gododin, dating back perhaps to the 6th century, we find a fleeting reference. A warrior is praised for his bravery, and the poet writes simply, although he was no Arthur, it is a ghost of a line, proving that even then, the name Arthur was the gold standard, the measure by which all other heroism was judged. As we drift further, we must acknowledge that the Arthur of our imagination, the king of chivalry, was largely sculpted by the pen of one man, Geoffrey of Monmouth. In the 12th century, he wrote the history of the kings of Britain, weaving together fragments of folklore, and perhaps his own invention. It was Geoffrey who gave Arthur a court and a conquest that spanned a continent, transforming a local warlord into an emperor of the imagination. And what of the sword? In these oldest versions, the sword was not always the one in the stone. In Welsh legend, his sword was known as Caelfolch, a name that would later soften and evolve into the famous Excalibur. It was a weapon of terrible power, flashing like lightning, connected to the ancient Irish legends of magical blades. Finally, for this chapter of origins, consider the silence that surrounds his end. The early texts do not speak of a final death, but of a departure, a grave that could not be found. This ambiguity, this refusal to confirm his passing, gave rise to the most enduring hope of all, the belief that he is the Rex Quandam Rexque Futurus, the once and future king, sleeping beneath a hollow hill, waiting for the day when the world needs him once again. And now, we drift deeper into the mist, moving from the man to the metal. There is a curious confusion that often clouds our memory of the legend. Many believe there was but one sword, a single blade that defined the king. But as we sift through the ancient texts, we find that there were, in fact, two distinct weapons, each with its own story, each with its own soul, one drawn from the earth, representing right by birth, and one drawn from the water, representing right by magic. Let us first contemplate the sword in the stone, in the romance titled Merlin, written by the poet Robert de Boron in the 12th century. The sword appears mysteriously, thrust into an anvil, which sits upon a great stone. It is a test, not of strength, but of destiny. It is said that many knights tried to pull it free, their muscles straining, their armor creaking, but the steel would not move, until the young squire Arthur, with the ease of a thought, drew it forth. The sword, the first sword, was the symbol of his lineage. It was the iron proof that he was the true-born son of Uther Pendragon. It was a weapon of the earth, solid, grounded, and bound to the laws of men. It served him well in his early wars, uniting the fractious petty kings under one banner. However, legends are rarely simple. In the darker, more violent retellings, such as the post-Vulgate cycle, this first sword did not last forever. During a fierce duel with King Pellinore, a battle where Arthur's pride perhaps outweighed his wisdom, the blade of lineage shattered, leaving the young king defenseless. It is a stark reminder that birthright alone is fragile and can be broken. It was then, in the silence following that defeat, that Merlin guided the king to a different kind of power. They rode not to a fortress, but to the edge of a desolate lake. The water was still, like a mirror of black glass, reflecting the gray sky. And from the center of this lake, an arm rose up, clothed in white samite, mystic and wonderful, holding a jeweled hilt. This was Excalibur, a name that echoes with power, derived perhaps from the Welsh Caelfolch, or the Latin caelebs, meaning steel. Legend holds that the blade was forged, not by mortal smiths, but in the otherworldly Isle of Avalon. It was said to shine so brightly that it blinded its enemies, burning with the light of 30 torches. To take this sword, Arthur had to row out in a small barge to meet the Lady of the Lake. Her name changes with the telling, sometimes Nimue, sometimes Vivian. She is a creature of the other world, neither good nor evil, simply ancient. She offers the sword, but with a silent understanding. It is alone, a gift that must eventually return to the deep. Yet, there is a secret, often whispered only in the most detailed manuscripts. Merlin asked Arthur, which is greater, the sword or the scabbard? Arthur, taken by the beauty of the blade, chose the sword, but Merlin corrected him softly. The scabbard, you see, was the true treasure, woven with old magic. It possessed the power of preservation. While Arthur wore the scabbard at his side, he would not bleed, no matter how grievous his wounds. It was the ultimate protection, a barrier against mortality itself. Tragically, the scabbard was not lost in battle, but to treachery. It is said that Morgan Le Fay, Arthur's half-sister, stole the scabbard and threw it into a lake, never to be found again. From that moment on, the king was vulnerable. The light of Excalibur remained, but the shield against death was gone forever, leaving him open to the final sunset. Now, we turn our gaze away from the gleaming swords and toward the shadow that stands behind the throne. We drift into the story of Merlin. To find the true Merlin, we must look first, not to the high courts of romance, but to the wild, rain-swept woods of Wales and Scotland. Long before he was a wizard in a pointed hat, he was known as Merlin WLLT, or Merlin the Wild, bard, and a madman who fled civilization after a terrible battle, living among the beasts, speaking to apple trees, and possessing the terrifying gift of prophecy. It is said that the Merlin we know was born from a collision of worlds. In the dramatic accounts of the 12th century, his origin is painted in shades of darkness and light. Legend holds that he was a Cambion, a child of two natures. His mother was a princess, perhaps even a holy nun, pure of heart, but his father was a demon of the air, an incubus who visited her in the night. This dark parentage was intended to create an antichrist, a being who would undo the works of heaven. But the legends say the child was baptized immediately upon birth. The holy water did not destroy him, but it cleansed his nature, washing away the evil, yet leaving behind the supernatural power and the ability to see past, present, and future all at once. He was not merely a caster of spells. In the way we think of modern magic, he was a druid, a connection to the old earth. In the earliest stories, he does not shoot fire, but rather, he moves the world. It is Merlin, who is credited with the impossible construction of Stonehenge, known then as the Giant's Dance. It is said he magically transported the massive stones from the mountains of Ireland, floating them across the sea, to set them down on the Salisbury Plain, as a memorial to fallen princes. His role in Arthur's life began before the king drew his first breath. Merlin was the architect of the Arthurian age. It was his magic that disguised King Uther Pendragon, allowing him to enter the castle of Tintagel and lie with the Duchess Igraine. From that night of deception, Arthur was conceived. Merlin knew that the once and future king had to be born. regardless of the moral cost. Yet, for all his foresight, Merlin could not see the trap that would eventually close around him. The texts speak of a tragic irony. The wisest man in the world fell victim to the folly of love in his twilight years. He became infatuated with a young huntress, or perhaps a priestess, known as Vivian, or sometimes Mimio. He followed her, weary and lovesick, through the forests of Brittany, teaching her his secrets. One by one, she learned how to part the mist, how to read the stars, and finally, she asked him for the ultimate secret: how to trap a man without walls and without chains, so that he might never leave. Merlin, knowing the outcome, yet unable to resist her, taught her the spell, and one afternoon, as he slept beneath a blossoming hawthorn tree, or perhaps within a rocky cave, she traced the lines of magic around him. The air hardened like glass. The world faded away. He was not killed, for such a being cannot easily die. He was simply removed, trapped in a tower of invisible air, or encased in the trunk of an ancient oak. Legend says he sleeps there still, deep in the forest of Broceliand. If you listen closely to the wind and the leaves, you can still hear him, groaning in his sleep, waiting, just like his king, for the turning of the tide. From the silence of the forest, we drift now to the bustling heart of the legend, to the great hall of Camelot, and the circle that defined an age. It is easy to imagine the round table as a simple piece of furniture, a wooden disc sitting in a stone room. But in the eyes of the poets, it was far more. It was a map of the universe, a symbol of the world itself, perfect, endless, and complete. The concept of the table, like so much in this story, comes from the mind of Merlin. It is said he designed it, not merely for dining, but to reflect the roundness of the earth and the circular motion of the stars. It was intended to be a mirror of the table used at the Last Supper, creating a sacred link between the knights of Britain and the mysteries of faith. The most famous quality of the table, of course, is its shape. In a time of rigid hierarchy, where every man knew his place, the circle was a radical idea. By removing the head of the table, Arthur removed the quarrel for precedence. No knight could claim to be closer to the salt, or higher in status than his brother. Even the king himself sat as an equal among his men, creating a fellowship, bound not by rank, but by loyalty. History offers us strange variations on this theme. We often picture 12 knights, echoing the 12 apostles, but the old texts dream much bigger. In the Vulgate cycle, the table is massive, vast enough to seat 150 souls, and in the writings of Lyman, a poet of the early 13th century, the table is described as a magical object, capable of seating 1,600 men, yet portable enough to be folded up and carried by the king wherever he rode. Curiously, the table did not originally belong to Arthur. It was a wedding gift, part of the dowry of Queen Guinevere, given to Arthur by her father, King Leodegrance. It arrived at Camelot, already old, already steeped in history, bringing with it 100 knights, leaving Arthur to find the remaining 50, to fill the empty spaces. But there was one space that could not be filled. a seat that stood perpetually empty, draped in mystery. This was the Siege Perilous, the perilous seat. It was reserved strictly, by Merlin's enchantment, for the purest knight of all, the one destined to find the Holy Grail. To sit in the Siege Perilous, without being the chosen one, was a fatal error. The legends say that any unworthy man who dared to take that place would be swallowed by the earth, or consumed by invisible fire. It remained a void in the circle, a silent reminder that perfection had not yet arrived. The names of the knights were not carved by hand, but appeared in letters of gold upon the backs of the chairs. Whenever a new champion proved his worth, it was a living roster of chivalry, a roll call of the brave: Gawain, Percival, Lancelot. And so the circle turned, year after year, a fortress of unity, until the day the final night arrived. Galahad, when he sat in the perilous seat and did not die, the circle was finally complete, signifying the beginning of the end. For once a thing is perfect, it has no choice but to begin to fade. And now, as the names fade from gold to memory, we turn our eyes to the men who sat in those chairs, the champions of the Round Table. When we think of the greatest knight, the modern mind often whispers the name Lancelot, but in the oldest legends, long before the French poets dipped their quills in ink, there was another who held that title: Sir Gawain, Arthur's own nephew. In the early Welsh tales, he was Gwalchmai, the Hawk of May. He was not merely a warrior, but a figure of ancient solar myth. It is said that his strength was tied to the sun itself, rising with the dawn, peaking at high noon, and fading as the shadows lengthened toward sunset. For centuries, he was the model of courtesy, the perfect shield of the king, untouched by the scandals that would come later. But stories, like empires, evolved. In the 12th century, a French writer named Crétin de Troyes introduced a new figure to the court: Lancelot of the Lake. He was a character built for a different age, an age obsessed with fin amours, or courtly love. Lancelot was not drawn from British soil, but was a creation of continental romance, dazzling and tragic. He was the best knight in the world, not because of solar magic, but because of his consuming love for Queen Guinevere. It was this love, curiously, that gave him his strength, and yet, it was this same love that sowed the seeds of the kingdom's destruction. As Lancelot's star rose in the literary sky, Gawain's began to set. To make room for the new French hero, the writers slowly darkened Gawain's character, transforming him from a solar prince into a worldly, sometimes hot-headed man. Yet, in the hearts of the traditionalists, Gawain remained the truest defender of Camelot. Speaking of Gawain, we cannot drift past him without remembering his greatest test. Not a battle of swords, but a game of honor, the tale of Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. It begins on New Year's Day, when a giant figure, green of skin, green of armor, and riding a green horse, storms into the hall. He offers no war, but a bizarre challenge, blow for a blow. He asks for someone to strike him with his axe, on the condition that, in 1 year and 1 day, the striker must seek him out and receive a blow in return. Gawain, ever the brave protector, accepts. He severs the Green Knight's head, but the giant simply stands, picks up his own head, and reminds Gawain of his promise. It is a story steeped in pagan ritual, a journey through the frozen winter, toward the Green Chapel, forcing Gawain to confront his own fear of death and the limits of his courage. Beyond these two giants, there are shadows of others who have been unfairly forgotten. Consider Sir Kay, Arthur's foster brother. In modern movies, he is often a buffoon or a bully, but in the ancient Welsh texts, Ci was a warrior of supernatural dread. It was said he could grow as tall as the tallest tree, and that his heart was so hot, his hands could dry damp wood just by holding it. And there was Bedivere, the one-handed knight. He was there at the very beginning, one of the first to join Arthur, and he would be there at the very end, the last man standing on the field of sorrow. It was Bedivere who was tasked with the final duty, to return Excalibur to the water, bringing the legend full circle, from the lake, back to the lake. And now, the mist parts further, revealing the figures standing in the moonlight, the women of the legend, whose magic and hearts wove the tapestry of Arthur's fate. We often speak of knights and kings, but the true power in these stories often flows from the hands of the enchantresses. Consider first the enigmatic Morgan Le Fay. In modern retellings, she is almost always the villain, a dark witch plotting her brother's ruin. But if we travel back to the Vita Merlini, written in the 12th century, we find a very different woman. Here, she is Morgan, the chief of 9 sisters, who rule the Isle of Avalon. She is not wicked, but wise, a healer of great renown. It was she who received the wounded Arthur after his final battle, promising to tend to his broken body. The Le Fay attached to her name simply means the fairy, hinting that she was never entirely human, but a goddess of the Celtic world, slowly diminished by time. It is curious how history turned against her. As the romances were written down by monks, the independent, powerful woman became a threat. She was transformed from a healer into a sorceress, jealous of Guinevere, and determined to expose the cracks in the Round Table. Yet even in her darkness, she remains Arthur's sister, a necessary shadow to his blinding light. And then, there is the Lady of the Lake, often confused with Morgan, but a distinct force of her own. We know she gave the sword, but few remember her role as a mother. When the young Lancelot was a child, his father's kingdom was destroyed. The lady rose from the water and took the infant into her arms, plunging him beneath the waves. He did not drown, for the lake was an illusion, a veil hiding a crystal kingdom. There, she raised him, teaching him the arts of nobility and war. This is why he is known as Lancelot du Lac, Lancelot of the Lake. He was a product of magic, nurtured by a spirit of the water, before he ever arrived at the court of men. Finally, we turn to the queen, Guinevere, Gwenevere in the Welsh, meaning the white enchantress or white ghost. Her story is the most tragic of all, often reduced simply to her infidelity. But in the eyes of the medieval poets, she was the personification of sovereignty. To hold the queen was to hold the land. Her tragedy was not merely one of forbidden love, but of impossible choices. She was the glue that held the fellowship together, yet she became the wedge that drove it apart. It is historically fascinating that in the earliest chronicles, there is no mention of Lancelot at all. In those versions, if she is abducted, it is by dark figures like Melwas or Mordred, representing the theft of the kingdom itself. The love affair with Lancelot, introduced by the French, added a layer of human heartbreak to the myth. It suggests that even the perfect kingdom, Camelot, could not survive the chaotic nature of the human heart. It was not an army that destroyed the dream, but a sigh, a glance, and a love that could not be denied. As we leave these figures, standing on the shore of memory, we see that they are not merely supporting characters. They are the architects of the beginning and the harbingers of the end, guarding the gates of the other world. We have walked through battlefields and sat within the stone walls of Camelot, but now the path narrows and the air grows thin. We drift into the realm of the spirit, toward the most elusive mystery of all, the Holy Grail. When we close our eyes and picture the Grail, we almost always see a chalice, a golden cup studded with jewels, glowing with an inner light. But the origins of this object are far more complex and far more ancient, hidden in the dense fog of early romance. It was Chrétien de Troyes, the French poet, who first wrote of the Graal in the late 12th century. But in his unfinished poem, he did not describe a cup used by Christ. He described a serving dish, a wide, deep platter, carried by a beautiful maiden during a mysterious feast. It was a thing of wonder, yes, but its connection to the divine was not yet fully formed. It was only later, as other writers picked up the thread, that the object transformed. Robert de Boron, seeking to weave the Arthurian world into the tapestry of Christian history, reimagined the Grail. He declared it to be the cup of the Last Supper, the vessel used by Joseph of Arimathea to catch the blood of Christ at the crucifixion. Suddenly, the quest was no longer just an adventure. It was a search for the very presence of God on earth. But history offers us yet another strange variation. In the German retelling, Percival, by Wolfram von Eschenbach, the Grail is not a cup at all. It is a stone, the lapis exilis, a stone said to have fallen from the crown of Lucifer during the war in heaven, or perhaps a stone brought down by angels. It possesses the power to sustain life indefinitely, feeding those who gaze upon it. A stark reminder that truth often changes shape, depending on who is telling the story. The quest for the Grail was the undoing of the Round Table. Merlin had prophesied it. He knew that the pursuit of spiritual perfection would scatter the knights, drawing them away from the unity of the court into the solitary wilderness. It represents the shift from the worldly glory of the sword to the quiet, inward journey of the soul. The heart of the Grail mystery is tied to the Fisher King, the wounded guardian of the relic. He suffers from a wound that will not heal, a wound in the thigh that mirrors the brokenness of his land. the wasteland, where crops will not grow, and waters do not flow. It is said that the land and the king are one, and only the Grail can restore them both. Many knights rode out, seeking this healing light. Gawain, with his courtesy, failed, for his heart was too attached to earthly things. Lancelot, the greatest of them all, came close, so close he could feel the heat of the Grail, but he was barred from the chamber, held back by the weight of his forbidden love for Guinevere. He could see the divine, but he could not touch it. In the end, only 3 achieved the quest, each in their own way. There was Percival, the original hero, the innocent fool who learned wisdom through compassion, asking the right question to heal the king. Then there was Bors, the steady, humble knight, the only one of the 3 to return to Camelot, to tell the story. And finally, Galahad, the White Knight, the son of Lancelot. He alone was pure enough to look directly into the Grail, to see the ineffable mysteries within, without being blinded. For Galahad, the Grail was not a trophy to be brought back, but a door. When he achieved it, he did not return to the world of men. He transcended it, leaving the Round Table behind, for a kingdom not made of stone. We leave the sacred silence of the Grail Castle and step out into the wild winds that blow across the ancient landscape. Here, in the hidden valleys and high peaks, we find the creatures and the places that defy the laws of men. Let us begin our drift toward the west, across the water, to the island known as Avalon. It is the final resting place of the king, but it is also a riddle wrapped in mist. The name itself, Insula Avalonis, is believed to mean the Isle of Apples, derived from the Welsh word affle. In the Celtic imagination, the apple was a fruit of the otherworld, a symbol of eternal youth and healing. Avalon was not a place of death, but a paradise where the winter never came, where the trees bore fruit all year round, and where the veil between this world and the next was thin enough to walk through. Long before Arthur was a king, the land was shaped by forces far older and more terrifying. We speak of dragons, specifically the vision of Merlin at the fortress of Dinas Emrys. The legends tell of a king named Vortigern trying to build a tower, but every night the walls would crumble. Merlin, then just a boy, revealed the truth sleeping beneath the earth. 2 dragons, one red and one white, locked in an eternal struggle. When the earth was opened, the dragons awoke and fought. The white dragon represented the Saxons, the invaders from the sea. The red dragon represented the people of Britain. Merlin prophesied that though the white dragon would dominate for a time, the red dragon would eventually rise again, a symbol that flies upon the flag of Wales to this very day. But dragons were not the only monsters in the mist. In the rugged, earliest Welsh poems, Arthur is often portrayed as a giant slayer. These were not the fairy tale giants of children's books, but primal forces of chaos. There is the tale of the giant of Mont Saint-Michel, a creature of horrific appetite, who lived upon a tidal island. Arthur rode out to meet him, climbing the steep rocks alone. It was a brutal, visceral contest, not of chivalry, but of raw strength. Arthur slew the beast, not with magic, but with the sheer will of a protector, clearing the land for his people. And let us not forget the questing beast, a creature so strange, it defied description. It had the head of a snake, the body of a leopard, the haunches of a lion, and the feet of a hart. It made a noise, like the barking of 30 dogs. This beast was never meant to be caught. It was the embodiment of the hunt itself, a symbol of the chaos that the knights tried to tame, wandering eternally through the forest, always just out of reach, reminding us that some things in this world can never be fully conquered. The shadows lengthen, and the golden age begins to dim. We have reached the chapter of twilight, the end of Camelot. It is often said that a kingdom cannot be destroyed from the outside, only from within, and the instrument of this destruction was Mordred, Medrawd in the Welsh. In the earliest chronicles, he was simply a warrior who fell at Camelot alongside Arthur. There was no mention of treachery, only of death. But as the centuries turned, the storytellers darkened his heart. In the French romances, he became the ultimate betrayal made flesh. He was no longer just a nephew, but Arthur's son, born of that forbidden night with his half-sister. He was the sin of the father, returning to claim the throne, a living reminder that past mistakes can never be fully buried. While Arthur was away, fighting wars across the sea in France, Mordred seized the crown. He claimed Arthur was dead, and even tried to marry Queen Guinevere. It was this usurpation that forced the king to return, racing back to Britain, not to a parade of flowers, but to a shore lined with the armies of his own kin. And so we come to the field of Camelot. The location is lost to history, perhaps in Somerset, perhaps further north, near Hadrian's Wall. It was not a battle of glory, but of sorrow. The texts describe it as the unhappiest of battles, where the flower of chivalry destroyed itself. Legend holds that the battle began by accident. The two armies faced each other, tense, waiting for a truce. But a knight, seeing an adder, a snake, in the grass, drew his sword to kill it. The flash of steel was seen, the trumpets sounded, and the slaughter began. A tragic reminder that destiny hangs by the thinnest of threads. By sunset, silence had fallen. Only Arthur and Mordred remained standing among the dead. The king, spear in hand, charged his son, and Mordred, sword raised, ran to meet his father. It was a fatal embrace. Arthur's spear pierced Mordred's chest, but in his dying act, Mordred struck Arthur a terrible blow to the head, shattering the helmet and the hope of Britain. As the king lay dying, he commanded Bedivere to throw Excalibur back into the water. Twice Bedivere failed, unable to throw away something so beautiful, so valuable. But on the third time, he obeyed. The hand rose from the waves, caught the hilt, and brandished it 3 times, before pulling it down into the deep. The magic had returned to its source. But Arthur did not die, not in the way men usually die. A barge appeared in the mist, black as midnight, carried by weeping queens. Morgan Le Fay was there, finally at peace with her brother. They took him gently to heal his wounds in the Vale of Avalon. And there, the legend pauses. It does not end, for the inscription on his supposed tomb at Glastonbury Abbey read, Hic jacet Arthurus Rex quondam Rex K Futurus. Here lies Arthur, the king that was, and the king that will be. He is not gone, merely sleeping, waiting in a cave or a hollow hill, for the day when his people need him most. And finally, as the barge disappears into the mist, we are left with the story itself, a story that has traveled further and lived longer than any king of flesh and blood. It is fascinating to trace the path of this legend. It did not begin as a romance of knights in shining armor. In the beginning, in the dark, rain-soaked hills of early medieval Wales, it was a saga of survival. The Arthur of the Mabinogion is a chieftain of a rough world, fighting witches, hunting magical boars, and defending his people against the terrifying unknown. There were no silk handkerchiefs, only iron, and blood, and mud. But as the story crossed the Channel, carried by traveling minstrels into France, it underwent a magical transformation. In the 12th century, the French poets, particularly Chrétien de Troyes, dressed the British warlord in new clothes. They added the high ideals of chivalry, transforming the rough warband into a court of elegant manners, where a knight's duty was not just to fight, but to serve a lady and uphold a code of honor. It was the French who gave us Lancelot and the Grail, and the concept of fin amours, courtly love. They softened the edges of the Celtic myths, turning wild magic into civilized enchantment. The misty forests became setting for spiritual quests, rather than places of primal danger. Then, in the 15th century, a knight prisoner named Sir Thomas Malory gathered these scattered French and English tales and wove them into the definitive masterpiece, Le Morte d'Arthur. Writing from a prison cell, amidst the chaos of the Wars of the Roses, he looked back at the golden age of Camelot with a deep sense of loss, creating the tragic arc that defines the story today. For a time, the legend slept, dismissed by the Age of Reason as mere superstition. But in the 19th century, the Victorians found him again. Writers like Alfred Lord Tennyson, in his Idylls of the King, polished the old shield once more. They saw in Arthur a moral ideal, a mirror for their own time, reflecting their hopes for order, virtue, and civilization against the chaos. The legend, you see, is a living thing. It changes to fit the shape of the world that needs it. In times of war, Arthur is a general. In times of peace, he is a king of justice. In times of doubt, he is a spiritual seeker. He is, quite literally, the once and future king, always returning in a new guise. Even today, we continue to search for him. Archaeologists dig in the soil of Tintagel and Cadbury Castle, hoping to find a shard of pottery or a rusty blade that links the myth to the man. We want to believe that somewhere, beneath the noise of the modern world, the dream of Camelot is real. And perhaps it is, not in the stones or the soil, but in the quiet spaces of our own imagination, in the belief that right can triumph over might, and that even when the sun sets on the kingdom, there is always the promise of a new dawn. So now, let the book close gently. The knights have returned to the earth. The swords are sleeping in the stone, and the Lady of the Lake rests beneath the water. Drift now into that quiet realm where legends are born and where kings sleep forever. And so, we have reached the end of our journey through the mist. We have sifted through the fragments of history and the golden shards of romance. We have seen the Roman soldier and the Celtic king, the wooden fortress and the soaring towers of Camelot. But now, the line between what was real and what was imagined is no longer important. The facts and the fables have merged into one soft tapestry woven by the hands of time. You do not need to remember the dates or the names. Let them fall away, like leaves settling on the surface of a still lake. Let the sword return to the stone. Let the dragon sleep in the hill, and let the mist cover the tracks of the knights. The archives are closed, the legend is safe, and so are you. Drift now, away from the shore, into the deep, quiet, velvet dark. This is Time Drift. Good night.